Okay. Hi. Ready? Um, Hello, everyone. I want to thank everyone for joining this call today. Before we begin, I want to say personally, and I think that I speak for every Israeli on this call, and everyone would agree with me, that the emails, the WhatsApps, the phone calls of support and concern that we've gotten from all of you have meant an enormous amount to each one of us during a very difficult time. Many of you have been following, not surprisingly, the political developments of this since this started. The objective today is to really talk about the implications to the Israeli high-tech industry, to the Israeli venture industry. And for this, we've gathered four speakers. Avi Hasson, who is the CEO of Startup Nation Central. Dror Bin, who is the CEO of the Israel Innovation Authority. Adam Fisher, who's a general partner and leads the Israeli investing at Bessemer. And Einat Gez, who is the CEO of a well-known Israeli startup called Papaya Global. Each one of them will speak for 5 to 7 minutes about their perspective of what's going on. If you have questions, and we're certainly open to it, please send us a note on the questions and answers. We're going to gather those questions, and then I'll read out the questions at the end, and the panelists will address them. And so without further ado, I want to call on Avi Hasson, CEO of Startup Nation, to give his perspective.
Thank you very much, Alan. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this session. Let me just start by saying, obviously, we're all still under the impact of the horrific events that started last Saturday and really the war that has been unfolding in the days after. And as Alan said, we'll be focusing more on the impact on the Israeli economy, but mostly on the health of the Israeli sector. And obviously, this audience is quite knowledgeable and has been engaged with this sector, knowing that it is, in many aspects, the business plan of the country and the economic engine of our economy. But it also has that specific element of being tightly connected to the global value chain. Israeli companies serve global customers, they work with global partners, they rely on global funding, and they compete on a global basis. So while COVID is an example for something that affected the entire tech industry or the economic downturn, now we're facing something which is focused in Israel and does indeed put a specific impact on the well-being on companies and entrepreneurs. So high-tech entrepreneurs and companies, well, first and foremost, they're Israelis, and as such, they have to manage through the situation that we all face. We estimate that about 15% of the workforce has been enlisted to reserve duty. We have to add to that, of course, spouses of employees, children of employees. We have to add, unfortunately, with 1,400 people assassinated, hundreds of hostages, there are thousands of Israelis who've been directly impacted by that. And that creates a challenge as such. Now, if you think about a startup company, it's different than a multinational company. A multinational company, even if it has thousands of employees in Israel, can really shift those resources globally. But a startup company really does to go the extra mile in order to make sure that it can continue serving its customers and progressing the company. I must say that from speaking to Israeli CEOs, and we have the benefit of having with us on the panel Einat, an entrepreneur and CEO, and Adam, an active investor, Israeli management teams has been extremely agile in shifting internal resources and making sure that the mission critical elements of the company, the business continuity, the customer support, the DevOps, manufacturing when relevant, these are not being hit. Now, unfortunately, as a nation, but fortunately as businesses, we had a lot of experiences in dealing with such situations. In the past 20 years, we could mention certain rounds of conflict with Gaza, with Lebanon, and so on. And throughout, Israeli high-tech has shown resilience, really gaining the trust of the global investment community and its customers. And we really see the same happening here. Having said that, this is a different event than the one we've seen before, and it's still soon to assess how this specific act of war is being unfolded, expanded or not, and so on. If we look into the past, though, data shows, and this is not just sentiment, that Israeli high-tech outperformed its peer even through the conflict, recovered quicker, and actually some of the best companies in Israel later to be IPO'd or acquired were created, as an example, in the third quarter and fourth quarter of 2014, one of our former rounds of conflict with Gaza. So really judging on the ability on the ground of the high-tech managers, we've seen their ability to really go through the difficult task of a fine balance. You have to deal with the safety and well-being of your employees. You have to serve your customers and really try to navigate through those waters. We've really seen high-tech company performing quite well there. Alan has mentioned the personal messages that you've sent, and obviously I think all of us in the panels received tens and hundreds of those messages. But I think equally important are the public statement of CEOs of large tech companies. Over 75 multinational companies leadership have issued strong support statement for Israel, showing their faith, not just their moral support, but also their faith in Israeli high-tech economy. We've had 500 venture firms and investment houses showing similar statements. And while I'll end my opening act, I will maybe talk about how can we translate that support into activities on the ground. But let me tell you, and of course, I must say as an Israeli, not as a participant in the high tech, also the strong statements in support of the President of the United States in his speeches, in his visit to Israel, meant a lot to all of us Israelis. Really gave us not just a moral boost and confidence, but really that understanding that this is not an Israel-specific issue. And we really are our friends and partners along the world are working with us, hopefully, to finish this as soon as possible while minimizing casualties from all sides. I'm sure Einat will talk later about the different aspect, which is how the Israeli high-tech and innovation ecosystem is utilizing the resources and capability to support the national need. And therefore, I will not dwell on that part. But let me just say maybe to finish my opening statement, as I've said, that I think we've seen a lot of understanding from customers and investors into what's happening in Israel right now. For Israeli startups, one of the most important things is funding. We are in a global economic downturn. Even before these things happen, these are not easy times for startups worldwide, not just in Israel. And certainly that poses an extra challenge or burden in the cycle of the company. Dror will talk about some of the programs that the government has put forward to help with that bridge emergency funding. And we at Startup Nation Central are promoting and are part of similar initiatives, really try to bring both people who want to support Israel, but also people who identify this investment opportunity as a good time to move forward and be an active participant in Israel as such. A different part is really trying to bring all this talent, senior people from the industry like yourselves, advisors, people from technology companies or financial institutions who can become more active in working with Israeli startups and really helping them in their challenges, be it funding, but also access to markets, customers, and so on. So to sum up, there's a direct impact, as I've said, on the workforce, which becomes an enlisting. It's harder to make businesses, even though Israel, as being mostly a software based ecosystem, can do its business, deliver its product, market it over the cloud, utilizing the platforms. And Papaya is just one example of a company who's headquartered in Israel but has global operations and has the ability to serve its global clientele by utilizing that workforce worldwide. In essence, when the war between Ukraine and Russia started, Israel companies at the time employed about 20,000 Ukrainian employees, and they started shifting resources out of the Ukraine to other places in the world. So that experience has also been similar, as well as COVID, which really showed that a lot can be done on the digital platform. The challenges are there. They will remain for the next future. But I think a big part of what Israel has proven over the year makes me very optimistic when I look into the future, because at the end of the day, the ecosystem that has been developed here in the past 20 years have really shown its value to the multinational companies, to the global investor base, and the talent and its capabilities remain strong, showing that the main attributes of the Israeli high tech can be meaningful, operating, and resourceful during the wars and also in the months and years to come. Thank you, Alan.
Thanks, Avi. And I if I may, just also shout out to Prime Minister Sunak and to President Macron and to the German Chancellor, who have also, been extremely supportive. Some of them whom have been visiting here recently, and so we have a number of Europeans on as well, and I want to thank them as well for the support we've been getting. Next speaker is Dror Bin. Dror is the CEO of the Israel Innovation Authority. It's the principal government organization responsible for assisting, financing the high-tech industry. Dror can tell you a little bit about the Innovation Authority and in particular what the Innovation Authority announced today to assist the industry, and I would even say reduce the risk, any potential risk for investors. So Dror, without further ado, please.
Thank you very much, Alan. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. In the next coming minutes, I would like to speak with you about the importance of the Israeli high-tech to the Israeli economy, as well as things that we are doing following the war just broke 12 days ago. First of all, we always talk about the high-tech engine to the Israeli economy. Just a few figures to share with you. 5.6% of local GDP is invested in R&D. This is the highest number in the world. Almost 12% of Israeli workforce works in the Israeli high-tech, around 18% of GDP. Just as a reference, in the US, it's about 9%, 8 or 9. In Europe, it's 5 or 6%. So you can understand from that the importance to the Israeli economy. 30% of income tax and about 50% of the export is high-tech goods and services. Also, in the global scope, when we count the number of high-tech companies operating from Israel, it's about 9,000, only in the third place after San Francisco and the Bay and after New York City. So the impact of a slowdown in Israel can also will be felt also globally. Out of those 400 companies are multinationals. Most of them came into the ecosystem through acquisition of startups. Some of them just came and opened their R&D and operations in Israel. But practically most of the global brands tech brands are here in a very wide operation. We estimate also to have around 500 active investor organizations. So the ecosystem is very vibrant. As you all know, in the last year or so, there was a major decrease in investments globally as well as in Israel. So we entered into this war not in an optimal situation. Few words about the Innovation Authority. As Ellen said, we are a government agency, independent government agency that is responsible for strengthening the competitiveness of the Israeli Innovation Hub. We realize that many tech hubs in the world are basically competing for the same things, venture funds, talent, knowledge, workforce, and we want to make sure that Israel sustains its high rank in this top league of tech hubs in the world. We fulfill this mission in three different ways. One is direct investment in high-risk, disruptive startups, early stage startups that are pushing the envelope of innovation, disruptive innovation that the private sector, the risk is so high that the private sector is under investing in, so we come in and invest the government money. We also invest in the infrastructure for emerging technologies, applied research in the universities, labs, talent education. And the third way we operate by is removing growth barriers. You saw that we have around 9,000 companies in the ecosystem. Well, we get 3,000 submissions every year, and those who did not submit this year submitted last year or will submit next year. So basically, we are in touch with all high-tech companies in Israel, and from that, we can very quickly understand what are the growth challenges that these companies are facing and reach out to the relevant ministry or agency of the government in order to remove this barrier. All in all, we invest $500 million every year in the Israeli ecosystem, again, in order to strengthen and sustain the competitiveness of the ecosystem. Since the war broke, we've been in touch probably with hundreds of companies and investors. I personally spoke with tens of entrepreneurs and CEOs to understand what are the challenges and where is the focus of the Israeli companies. Well, basically, the things I heard are maybe categorized into three. First of all of us are trying to process and grieve the atrocities that we witnessed. It was very difficult to see and to understand that we are facing such barbarism. The second thing is that we are all focused on victory. You know, we are in the middle of the war and we have to be victorious. And the third thing is business continuity. I think that all the CEOs are focused on making sure that the operation continues, being able to serve the global customers, being able to continue their R&D projects. All of them, despite all the challenges, are very focused on that. And there are challenges. Some of the people are in army duty. Some of the people have faced personal loss and they have to cope with that. So there are many challenges. But above all these challenges, the one that we heard the most was a short-term funding challenge. Many of the companies were in the middle of a funding round. And since the war broke, some investors became more hesitant. Some people from the companies themselves became less available to deal with fundraising. And we want to make sure that no good company with the promising technology and promising market potential will go under because of lack of funding. And this is exactly the reason why we announced just this morning a bridge financing fund. We call it the Fast Track. Initially, it will be $25 million for the next 90 days. If needed, we will add more funds and extend also the timeline. But anyhow, companies starting beginning of November, companies will be able to submit a request for grant from us. We will evaluate the request very quickly. In a matter of very few weeks, we'll give an answer. The size of the fund is $25 million currently, but as I said, this is only an initial fund. We expect matching from the private sector. So overall investment should be around $50 to $75 million. The focus is on companies with short runway, something like below 6 months of runway. Obviously, with promising technological assets, with deep and developed technologies. They are in early stages, either still in product development phase or early sales phase. and the low availability of investment capital from its current investors. So this is the profile we are looking for. So I guess that somewhere around December or January 24, there will be many good companies, promising companies that got grants from us. They will be looking for matching investment from you and from other investors. And I hope that you will stand by them and also stand with us, the Israeli high tech in general and the state of Israel in general, in this war that was, given to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dror. If I may just add a couple of points on what Dror said, obviously that amount is just the first tranche of a much broader program. Second, the budget of 500 million, still continues to be put to work. And as many of you know, many of the venture funds in Israel have raised significant capital in the last couple of years. So there is, local capital to continue to support companies. This is a nice way of lowering some of the risk associated with companies, and hence that government-supported program. Without further ado, I'd like to call on Adam Fisher. I think many of you know Adam, one of the leading venture investors in Israel, and a general partner over at Bessemer. Adam, please.
Thanks, Alan. Hi, everybody. Also, I want to send a thank you to all of you who have sent support in various ways. It's heartwarming and it's really been incredible. It's important, and you can keep doing it. Some of what I'll say might be a little bit repetitive. I'll try and give it from a VC perspective. As many of you know, Bessemer is an American fund. We've had a large operation in Israel for the last 18 years, investing well over $1.5 billion across 60, 70 startups. Our current portfolio is about 40 companies. So we have a good sense of what's going on at any given time in the high-tech economy. I will just maybe say just a sentence first to tell you that, much of us are actually focused on the enormous human toll. As you can imagine, it is a national trauma. With 2 weeks having gone by, we are feeling a bit more focused and are starting to feeling the emotional recovery. And there's been a massive mobilization. And by mobilization, I don't mean the reserves. I'm talking about the civilian self-mobilization, where tech is taking a very leading role. And that's also energizing in ways that's really hard to describe. But tech leaders, through donations, through their time, through their network, have done incredible things. And that provides energy not only for those volunteering, but also for those who are focused on work. Now, without taking away from the human side, I know we're here to talk about tech companies and the tech economy. It might sound strange, but it's largely business as usual. And I say that because, as was mentioned earlier, Israel is an incredibly resilient and agile society. We move fast. It's not just that startup culture, that startup nation. It applies to kind of everything, the way the country runs. Especially in situations like this, it becomes very advantageous. As a country, as an economy, we've often dealt with adversity. And I'm not just talking about small, short wars of the last decade, or even COVID, or even having to deal with the war in Ukraine. As a society, as an economy, we deal with challenges like working from afar, working difficult hours, working with very limited resources. So although 10% or so, I believe, of Israeli resources have been allocated elsewhere, the companies are actually doing a great job at shifting resources and working much harder. Now, I will say that remote work is kind of the modus operandi at this point. Almost all companies have moved to remote work. Again, we've had a rehearsal for that. Children are also now doing school remotely, and that's great that system is in place. So that means that their parents can focus on work. I need to point out, as people often forget, when we talk about Israeli tech, we're talking about customers in the US and in Europe and in Asia. We're not talking about Israeli customers. This is important because demand hasn't gone down by the fact that there's a war in Israel. We sell into these large markets, and because those customers continue to be demanding, because they continue to buy, and they are, that actually provides us plenty to focus on at this time. Our larger companies, examples include Papaya, but also hundreds of large companies. I would say almost any company with about 150 employees or more have probably 30 to 50% of their employees outside of Israel. Again, this sometimes is not obvious, but we have sales and marketing and customer support teams outside of the country. This means that a lot of the business is unaffected. It also allows us to shift resources when necessary, either by relocating certain key employees or by just giving them more to do when the Israeli team has fewer members of the team available. It's true that the war is a distraction, but work is itself also a very positive distraction. And so a lot of people have really poured themselves into work because they're needed. And so we may have fewer hours to work in the day, but they're much more productive hours. And I think we're all feeling that, which means you still have product launches, you still have partnerships being sealed. It's a little bit too early to say that there are any delays or failures as a result. Business continuity is something that everybody's asked about, and we've also asked internally. But the companies have been fairly quick to respond, again, for the reasons I'd mentioned. The airport's still open, so when people need to travel, they travel. We're not taking many visitors, but it's very easy to work remotely, and it's very easy for Israelis now to get on a plane anywhere in Europe or the US. One other thing I would point out is also from an economic standpoint, the weakening of the shekel, the Israeli currency, actually helps high tech. Since the beginning of the year, actually, the shekel was weakened by about 20% vis-a-vis the dollar. This is important because while our revenues are in dollars and euros, our salaries and rent here are in shekels. So it's a little bit ironic, but costs of Israeli high-tech companies are going down. From a pure VC perspective, there's no question that things have slowed down. It's very hard to get the attention to focus on a new investment. And I think the mood is such that it's also hard to, as an entrepreneur, to be focused entirely on raising money right now. But we're talking about the last 2 weeks. I do think that things will ease up in the coming weeks. For smaller companies, that may be more challenging. Our hope is that there will be short-term solutions like that of the Innovation Fund. I also would reiterate the point that Alan mentioned, that a lot of the smaller companies are early stage. Early stage is primarily based on local funds, and local funds have ample reserves, and they're at work. Again, they're not going to abandon the market that they're focused on. I think I would probably just end, because I know we're running out of time. I'll just end by saying that I'm not. People have asked me if I'm worried about the sector, and I'm not. I'm genuinely not. I know that these companies are doing well. We're going to have odd stories of even M&A transactions and fundraisings that get announced. I know because I can see them. It might be a little bit incongruous with what you see on the headlines, but that's the reality. Life continues, business continues, and I know that after this, after we win, you'll see an even stronger high-tech economy emerging out of Israel.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you for your comments. I appreciate it. Our next speaker is Einat Gez. Einat is the co-founder and the CEO of Papaya Global. Einat?
Yes. Hi. Okay. So hi, I'm Einat. I'm currently at the operational center that has come to life on October 7th afternoon, after we realized that that's going to be a long kind of journey. I heard Adam, and I generally agree with a lot of the things that he said, but I will provide another perspective. I think that first, while in the center, and the majority of the tech companies is located in the center of the country, so we can continue business as usual in terms of infrastructures, in terms of eventually business continuity and so on. I think that we see a few things. First, we see people that obviously are in reserve training and we need to replace them. Second, we see people as myself. I mean, I told someone a few days ago that I gave birth to 3 kids during my time in Papaya. I never missed an email in more than 2 hours, even after giving birth. In the last week and a half, I think I'm behind my emails quite badly because I'm busy day and night in the operational center here and supporting the country needs. Having said that, I think that this is how you build a company because eventually this is where people stand in and take responsibilities from their colleague and supporting the business. So I think that currently, first, obviously, majority of I would say mid to large organization in Papaya in the country are global kind of organizations. So it really helps to shift the balance. Looking on the past few years, we had COVID experience, we had Ukraine experience, we had few other experience, even by the way, in the US, we had a big, large center in Austin where they had, I think, a week in the winter where they were out of electricity and so on. So generally speaking, I think that the high-tech mentality is very capable and we have very good practice of how do we step in, support and back up each other. I think that the biggest thing that we are trying to do, I mean, if we're looking on the human side here, is to assure that we support people during those horrible times. And mentally, I think that the mental aspect here is very, very hard. Um, because obviously, I mean, as individuals, and Israel is a small country, we are all kind of seeing the horror. We are all facing terror stories that we know from firsthand, secondhand, and we need to assure that we support people emotionally. Do I think that things are going to be exactly on track and we're going to meet all of the targets of this quarter? No, but I think that eventually it's not going to be a huge kind of hit of and eventually uh, I think that eventually, if we will support people now, we will compensate this on the next quarter. So we need to look at this on the long run rather than like winning the short term. So what we did internally, and I have quite a lot of CEOs that we advise each other, is assuring that we really remove the pressure from everything that is not top in mind, top priority of the company, assuring that eventually we can also uh, remove the immediate pressure from people to deliver and deliver fast, not because they are not available to do so. I just think that eventually the mental pressure that is currently on everyone is quite high. And assuring that we provide them more support, assuring that we provide them the compassion and the security that they need, and eventually build this together. Generally speaking, as I said, I think that there are always unexpected and unknown situations. This is how we are built and trained when we are setting up company, when we are hitting the road. Quite a lot of unexpected, mainly this year, with quite a lot of challenges, both from the economic side, both from other things. So obviously, after the initial trauma and the shock of each one of us, I think that everybody kind of looking ahead. And to be completely honest, I think that everybody around the tech industry understand that the biggest win that we will have currently is to assure that companies are staying strong, that we continue business as normal. Because if we want, this is actually just going to add to the greatness or kind of the effect of this strategy and the people that are trying to eventually harm Israel and Israel's ability to function. So I think that this message is very clear and it's very strong with everyone around. And we look ahead, we do our best, and I'm optimistic that even if the short term will somehow be affected by people that are not present, they're doing reserve training and so on, midterm, long term, it will have no impact. It will actually build a very strong resilience in the company.
Thank you, Einat. Before I open it for questions, just a few comments. So as many of you know, while we're based in Israel at Vintage, we invest globally into venture. And so we have the option of investing anywhere. I can say to you as an LP, we continue to be super, super excited and energized to what's going on in Israel. And I think one of the things that's really, quite amazing is the resilience and the ability to adjust that Adam, Einat and Avi and Dror have mentioned. Einat talked about, and many of you may not know what she's referring to by an operations center. I was down there today. For those of you who may know Tel Aviv, there's a very large center of where they do big events and big shows, trade shows, etc. That whole area was taken over by the high-tech industry, divided up into units. One group dealing with people who from the south who became homeless because of the attacks. Another group helping to use technology to identify and find some of the people who have disappeared. Another group dealing with getting medical equipment. It's really quite unbelievable that in the course of a relatively short time, the high-tech industry came together and volunteered in a way that, if I know from what I heard, what I saw today, there are 15,000 volunteers each day. We're dealing with things like getting meals to people who lost their homes, finding places for them to stay, etc. It's something mind-boggling. I think it's a statement of what goes on in this country, and I think even more importantly, it's a statement of the resilience of this country. The ability to adjust, the ability to address things, and frankly, the ability to come together when things are challenging. As many of you know, this has been in advance of this, there was a challenging period here politically. What has been amazing by this, through this whole incident through this whole crisis, has been how everybody across the spectrum have come together to work together to address this. And I think, again, it's a function of really it's a function of the leadership, among others, of the people on this call. And I really want to shout out in particular Adam, Einat, Gez, Gigi Levy-Weiss, Ziv Kopp, and other people from the venture industry who have really done phenomenal work in trying to lead this. I can tell you one other thing that, and mind me being personal for a moment. At Vintage, our team is comprised of Jews, Christians, Muslims, Jews, and Arabs, and it's also been amazing to see how people have come together during this period. I think it's important that people realize this is not a Jews versus everybody else. It is people who believe in democracy and believe that this country should be a place for all of us, for Jews, Christians, and Muslims to be together, versus those who really are, terrorists who want to destroy exactly that kind of coming together. Some of you also have received notes from me, and a great example of this is somebody that all of us on the panel know well, a gentleman by the name of Eyal Waltman, whose daughter daughter and future husband were brutally murdered at that party by Hamas. And it was one of the most, I think, probably moving experiences that I've ever had, was attending the funeral of both of them, his daughter and his future son-in-law, who were buried next to each other. And Eyal, who built Mellanox, probably one of the most successful companies in Israel, talked about how he had built in Ramallah, Hebron, Nablus, and the Palestinian Authority, and even in Gaza, R&D centers. And at the gravesite of his daughter, he stood up and talked about how when this is over, he plans to go back down to Gaza to try and help rebuild the economy. And I think that that is the message. I think we have to get behind this. We have to get Hamas out. But I think there is still hope. There's a desire, especially in the high-tech industry, to try and continue to bring people together and be something that's much, really build something that we can all be proud of. And I think that, that is something that we, I certainly want to call out as something that's really incredible statement talking about resilience. It's also emotional resilience that allows you to make that kind of statement. Some of you have asked, and we've had this before, putting aside the business side, what you can do to be helpful. Quite frankly, just like you don't invest somewhere without a local partner, and certainly we don't, I think it's true around philanthropic efforts. So I strongly recommend that anyone who's thinking about that, I strongly recommend you chat with Einat or with Adam or Avi, etc. The other thing that I would note is that in addition to the capital that Dror and the Innovation Authority is putting together, there are a few groups that are coming together to create special funds for short-term capital loans, equity for companies to overcome the short-term challenges connected to this war. If you send me an email, if you're interested in participating in that, I'm happy to connect you with the various groups that are working on that. So in addition to the venture industries activities and to the important activities of the Innovation Authority, there's also other efforts that have come together to deal specifically with this issue. And as I say, I'm happy to connect you to any of those. On that note, I'm going to, we've received a number of questions, several questions. So I'm going to do my best to try and combine them. Just as first to Dror, as a comment from people that we've received, they're very, happy and thankful that there's this program. Some people have said that it would be obviously extremely important to broaden the size of the program. We've received that as input. Also, that somebody had mentioned that you're looking for companies with burn rates of 100,000, or the question is what exactly can be done to maybe even extend that number so larger companies are being supported.
Yep. So first of all, as I said, Alan, this is only an initial amount of money. If we see the need, we will put more money in and also extend the period of submission. As for limiting the burn rate, there is no such limit. Companies can also apply with higher burn rate.
All right, super. The other thing too, we've had a comment, and I know that I've spoken to Dror about this, and others have. There's a whole bunch of VCs that have offered to be to volunteer their time to assist the Innovation Authority to help shorten timetables to get capital across, and we've had that comment as well. And to the extent that you'd like to be assisting in that process, also feel free to reach out to me or to Dror, and we'd love to get you involved in that as well. Couple of other quick questions, if I can. One of them was there's a perception that the Israeli official capacity isn't functioning, and information isn't getting out about what's going on. What can we do to enable that more effectively? I don't know, Adam and Einat, if you want to take that.
Sorry, which question was this?
We got a question from somebody in the audience that they feel that the Israeli official organizations are not sufficiently effectively telling the story of what's going on here abroad. Yes. What do we do to make sure that information is conveyed effectively?
On the actual war or the
yes.
I think there are two fronts here. I don't think that it's about the actual kind of war, or eventually I think, unfortunately, that we might not be doing a really good job in explaining everything that happens here and how important and critical it is currently to just fight against terror for the world eventually, not only for Israel, definitely for the Jewish community. I think that the bigger story currently that we hear from ground is the questions: what's going on in Israel? Why everyone is asking for donations of equipment? Why everyone is asking for someone to buy them a ceramic vest and so on? I think definitely what we saw at first is that, and obviously, I mean, this is a black swan event, so I mean, it's not an event that anyone can get prepared to. Is that it took a while for the government to really the military to really kind of put their sense together and understand how to support. I think that the civil kind of organization and response, the first kind of civil organization, was much more effective. And we need to remember that there are a lot of different fronts here. Okay, we have people without houses. We have people that are still there are hostages. We have people that are still unidentified, and obviously we have soldiers. So there are lots of different currently problems that we are solving all together. I think, as Alan mentioned, the operational center that we have with the high tech and Brother in Arms, this is really kind of trying to provide multiple solutions to multiple needs. Do I know why Israel eventually military doesn't have all of the equipment that is needed? No, we don't have the answers for everything. Honestly, I think that the answers currently does not matter, because this is not our job currently to ask those questions. It's our job to ensure that we support wherever we need. And every one of us here, and generally speaking, this is really amazing to see in the country, are supporting the needs without asking why, how come we need to do it, how come the government is feeling it or not feeling it. There is a lot of questions to be asked. I think that if people here, and I'm sure that a lot of you are following the last year in Israel, we had a lot of issues already and a lot of kind of protests going on against the government, and a lot of criticism against the functionalities. So in a way, we need to look ahead and see this with the tragedy and sorrow and everything that is around this as an opportunity to create a better future, a better change, a better society, and eventually kind of rise up from this. So I don't think that this is the time to kind of go and debrief about why we weren't ready in this front or that front. This is the time to assure that we are learning from this, and we as civil does not we don't let the government not to be ready for the next time and build things properly. Assure that every single need have currently a plan ahead. And I think obviously Adam is leading a lot of the efforts with some other tech leaders and myself included, in raising significant funding for quite a lot of initiative that we want to step in. So there are immediate need and relief that we need to put in place, but I think that we will really be kind of stronger if we will think from now how we rebuild the future, how we take this as an opportunity to change things that over time, over the years, maybe were not being managed properly. And I think this is really kind of the magic in this whole event, having great people, amazing people with amazing execution kind of ability, just devoting a lot of their energy and time to just rebuild a lot of the functions here currently.
Alan, just a specific comment to the specific question. So we've been working at Startup Nation Central with leading CMOs of tech companies, venture firms. What we want to create is really a repository, a resource center that will include messaging of all kinds, different data points, all types of content that can be made available for whoever is up for the task of representing or sending across a certain message. It could be the companies themselves. It could be each and every one of you. So the idea again is not to wait for some entity to do it, but rather to build it and make it available for the entire ecosystem.
Yeah, and one of the comments that we received in questions was, what can be done on trying to find, for those who are in reserve duty, people who can volunteer and step in and help. And I know, Avi, you've are working on something around that, and hopefully, something can be put into place. So, yeah, absolutely. There's some ideas about this. Should this conflict go on longer, that we can do that. We got a question about the because of the reserve duty, et cetera. And, are we going to see a hiatus in innovation? I can tell you my experience also, because I sit on a number of boards, and I've been talking to a lot of, as you can imagine, to a lot of companies this week. I think Adam's point is extremely well taken, which is, while people are dealing with all these challenges, they're incredibly focused, and they're doing a lot more with somewhat less. And I think that's an important point. People are putting their heads down, getting super focused, and certainly innovation is not negatively effective. If anything, I think one of the things that, if anybody who's went to see the operations center that not talked about today, if anything, what it's done is actually, so as somebody who's one of the authors of that, or the founders of that innovation center, we've created 11 startups, that the government's essentially adopted just to, make sure that certain things are being done effectively in the country. So if anything, it's the opposite. And I think the fact that people are coming together is the best indication of that.
Yeah, I'll just add that a lot of the innovation we can't talk about. There are a lot of things that were developed over the last 10 days in typical Israeli style to help everything from the war effort to the civilian side. Hopefully in months ahead, it will come out what was done. But believe us when we say that Israeli high tech is really not just the heart of the economy, it's the heart of society. That includes innovation and entrepreneurship. I did see a question here about, will people be less or more reluctant to go out and start new companies after this? And the answer is absolutely not. I mean, you start a company because you want to build something, because you want to overcome challenges, because you see inefficiency, because you see a challenge that's worth solving. There are a lot of challenges that we've been met with in the last 2 weeks, and I think you're going to see just that much more innovation in the months and years ahead.
Somebody asked also a question about defunding, or because of the perception of Israel. I can tell you, if I'm getting, what I've been at least seeing is actually the opposite. I've been getting input from people about what do I do to actually invest. I think people get it. That what we're facing, and this was essentially our 9/11 moment, and I think that people understand that we are, or most people understand that we're a democracy trying to defend ourselves.
I would also add that most of the investors that invest directly in Israeli startups are quite familiar with the country and the economy. They're not one-offs. They've made a strategic decision years ago to get exposure to Israel. They usually have a dedicated team or a person that spends a lot of time here. So there's a level of familiarity that you might not have in a smaller country, perhaps in Europe, where there may not be nearly as much understanding and a network. And that goes a long way to just explaining why we don't expect really any change in the number of investors that are willing and interested in investing in Israel. I'm sure at this time there are some investors who think they may be able to get a good deal if they move fast. And my answer to them is pretty much probably not, because I think many are thinking the exact same thing. But I don't think you're going to see anybody pulling back in any meaningful way.
I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I want to thank everybody for joining us for this call. Again, I think it was the fact that we had such on really literally less than 24-hour notice, so much participation, I think is a wonderful testament to the friendships that all of us have out there. And I want to thank you for participating. And as I mentioned, we are extremely open to assist everybody on this call. I think all of you have my email. I'm happy to direct you to whoever you want, whether it's Avi with his initiative around staffing and helping and mentoring, if to Dror with what he's doing on the on the side of the financing and government support, to anyone who's interested in joining some of these emergency lending funds for startups that may have run into some difficulty, and to Adam and to Einat around their tremendous efforts in various projects to get the country, certainly the south of the country, back on track. So thrilled to connect you to anybody you wish. And again, I want to reiterate how meaningful it is for all of us, the support we're getting from all of you. And so thank you very much, everybody, for participating today. But more importantly, thank you again for caring. Be well.
Thank you.